Hey, Misty, can you hear me? This is Joe.
I sure can. Hey, Joe.
How are ya?
Good. How are you?
Doing just fine. Looks like we are now streaming. We are streaming on our social site starting at 10:30. And I have this scheduled till, is it 11:30 or noon?
I'm not sure how long they typically are.
11:30.
Okay, perfect. Well, we are up and running, so when everybody is here, we can get started.
Why are there two of these?
I didn't catch that, Caroline. What'd you say?
I was just saying, oh, never mind. I think
Okay. I did see two of you too, so.
You all will have to let me know once everybody's here and who we're waiting for, since I'm filling in for Daniel today. So I'll rely on you all to.
Yeah, I think we're just waiting for Sabrina at this point. I don't know if Olivia is planning on coming today.
Okay. Well, I'll just say I'm really excited to be spending time with you guys. Like I mentioned in my email, I've heard so much about you through my work with Daniel. So I'm glad that I got to fill in so I can hear a little bit about your work and preparing for the council presentation on Monday. I asked him, what are some things that need to get accomplished today? And he said pretty much everything is squared away at this point, and it's just about delegating who's doing what and maybe reviewing the PowerPoint. But are there other things that you all need to do today in your time together?
I don't think so.
yeah, I need to personally finish the thing that I'm supposed to do, but that's not really a group thing.
Yeah, I think that is at least what I had on our agenda was going over the presentation for Monday and making sure everyone felt comfortable. And that is, I think, it. Kennedy, you have anything?
Nope, that's it. I also, who said, oh, Caroline, I also need to finish the part that I got delegated. I've been really busy with work this week. So I am on the same page. But yeah, we can go through, and I think we should just do some introductions for Misty. So hi, Misty. I'm Kennedy. I graduated from UVA in December. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. This started, we have a capstone youth and social innovation class, and the Youth Action Lab was our project, and the Youth Action Lab does youth participatory action research. So we facilitate students doing their own research project basically. So we got linked up with Charlottesville Youth Council, and then some of our other group members worked with Albemarle High School, Black Student Union. And so then when the class was over, we were all like, we want to keep doing this. So we kept going.
Daniel shared that
through the school year.
Incredible.
But yeah, I'm going to Richmond Law in the fall, so I'm excited.
Congratulations.
Kennedy, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's Daniel's alma mater.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. He went to U of R.
I didn't know that. Well, I'll have to tell him. But who wants to go next?
I can go quickly. Kennedy basically said everything that there is to say about Youth Action Lab, other than, hi, Misty, good to see you again.
Good to see
and
you
I have the privilege of working with Kennedy, and Olivia is the other UVA student who's been working a lot with Youth Council this year. And so she's not here today, but they both have been amazing. And then we get to work with the students who can introduce themselves.
Yeah, I can go next. Also, I changed the theme just so we have something. If somebody wants to do something else, that's fine. But hi, my name is Margaret Ann. I am a senior at Charlottesville High School, and I've been a part of youth council since my freshman year. And yes, this has been a really awesome experience. We've never really done a research-based project before, so we've all learned a lot, which has been very cool.
Yeah, it seems really practical. What an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Marianne.
Yeah, I'm Caroline. I'm a junior at CHS, and this is my second year on youth council. Yeah, so I guess I don't really have that much else to say, but yeah, it's been really cool to do this year, which didn't know if it was going to be able to happen, like with Zoom and everything. So yeah, I think it's worked really well.
Awesome. Well, I can briefly introduce myself. I work for the Department of Human Services with Daniel. I'm the deputy director. I've been working at Human Services for 15 years. And I've been working directly with Daniel for the last several years. So always excited to hear what projects are cooking in the Youth Council. So I'm excited about this one for sure. Are there other Youth Council members that aren't here that will be here on Monday?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, Sabrina should be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Olivia, maybe.
Okay. Great.
And can someone drop a link in the chat to the documents that we're working on so Misty can see those?
Yeah, I got that.
And for Monday, we're the 4:30 slot. Is that correct?
Let me check my email from Daniel.
Okay. And should we expect to receive an email like from City Council? How does that work to be presenters on their Zoom?
Joe might chime in here, but I believe he'll send you one, or Ryan Wheeler will send you a link.
Gotcha.
Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, Brian, is this going to be for the council work session on Monday?
Yes,
Yes.
Prior to the meeting, yeah.
Yes.
If we could, you could either send it to, well, you could copy me and Brian. I'll actually put my email address in here, and just give me names and email addresses who needs to be added as a panelist, and you'll get us that unique invitation, very similar to what you got for today's meeting.
Awesome. We'll take care of that. Thank you.
And I will be there as well. I have another presentation that I'm introducing for the Food Equity Initiative. It just happened that both of these presentations are on the same day. So it's nice that I can be there for both. And depending on how you guys want to go about doing it, I was just gonna do like a 30-second introduction and just introduce you all, and then you guys take it away.
Dr. Dickerson, are you planning on being there?
I am planning on being there. What about you?
Yeah, I'll be there. I was just wondering, do you want to do like a introduction of like a brief, like what is the Youth Action Lab and what is Youth Participatory Action Research, or do you want me to do it?
It's up to you. I can do like a really quick 30-second to a minute and just like introduce myself and Youth Action Lab, and then hand it over to you if you want to talk more about like Youth Participatory Action Research and like what you've done this semester or this year.
Sounds
so how about that? I'll do like a really, really quick introduction, and then like I really want you all to speak mostly. So I'll hand it over, and then I probably won't speak for the rest of the time unless a specific question comes up that I need to answer.
Is everyone cool with that? Okay. So the background. So
I have that. I put that information into slides, but I can copy and paste it onto the Google Doc.
the shared slides.
No, I made my own, and then I was just
Okay.
gonna copy and paste it.
Okay.
But I can put those wherever.
I was just making sure that we covered like why, like kind of like why you guys wanted to do this topic specifically, like in terms of like we know why you picked it as like this is why it's an issue, but I think that it would be also meaningful for you guys to say something like this is something that has impacted us, like and it impacts our friends and like, you know, like your personal stake in this topic. Because like if you'd picked like, because we talked a lot about like transportation when we were first picking topics, right? And you guys like obviously have a stake in that, and that does impact your community. But this is something that's like, in my view, like even closer to home for you guys. So like, I think it would be impactful for you guys to say something about that as well in the background. Because like I'm assuming like Margaret Ann, you went to Walker and Buford, right? You had friends leave, right, and come back. Like that's a like personal experience that you've had. So I think that's important. So Olivia, if we just want to go through and like you can start with the background. If you need a minute to copy and paste it, no worries. But we can just everyone can go through and just talk through like why like their section a little bit. It, like super informal, not like this is not like a presentation run through. This is just like, this is why I picked this phrasing or whatever, or like, what do you guys think about this? You know, like, so we can all collaborate on everyone's sections.
Yeah, and Sabrina and I worked on ours together, so I can do, I don't think she's
Okay.
here. So I can say hers for this purpose.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi has been like really bad today. What are we doing? It cut out for a second.
We're just going through and everyone's going to talk through their section. Like super informal though. Like this is not how you're going to be like presenting, but it's just so we can all collaborate on like this,
Okay.
each other's sections and like get feedback and stuff. Olivia, are you working on getting your slides in?
Yeah, sorry, I'm copy and pasting that right now.
Sure.
I'm almost done. Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. I just copied it all in.
Wait, is it in the presentation outline or in the slides?
Presentation outline.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna throw it in the
Oh, sounds good. I can also do that. Sorry about that.
I got it. No worries. Oh, that didn't do what I wanted it to. That also didn't do what I wanted it to. Hold on. Okay, Olivia, you just want to talk about it off the presentation outline, and then I'll fix on this.
Sure, that sounds good. Sorry, let me just get back to the presentation outline. So I wasn't sure whether or not to start with sort of the history of like the Charlottesville public middle schools, or to start with like our research question. But I think it might be good to start with like the history of middle schools in Charlottesville. So Walker and Buford originally started as two junior high schools, serving like 7th through 9th graders in the Charlottesville area. And it happened that Walker drew kids from whiter, more affluent neighborhoods, while Buford drew kids from like less affluent neighborhoods with more people of color. And so it ended up being, even after integration, middle schools were basically still segregated for the most part. And although they had the same resources and same funding, Buford was seen as the inferior school, and sort of led students there to like feel a sense of inferiority. So in 1988, they came up with the idea, the city council, to pair the Walker Upper Elementary they came up with the idea to pair both schools into Walker Upper Elementary and Buford Middle School, so that 6th fifth through sixth graders would go to Walker, and then seventh through eighth graders would go to Buford, in order to like better integrate the schools. But unfortunately, this more just ended up with white and more affluent parents sending their children to private schools. And this was sort of exacerbated by the like large number of private schools within the Charlottesville and like surrounding areas. And I haven't yet gotten all of the demographics of students of color. I'm working on that though. I know Peabody, they have 25% students of color. I think Tandem's around the same. And then I have to get Village and Field, but I was going to compare that. I know you, Kennedy, we're going to get Buford and Walker. So then we can sort of compare that. And so that was sort of what I had for like the history of Walker and Buford as schools. But basically the main takeaway from that is that there's definitely been this attitude about Buford that it's kind of inferior to Walker, and a lot of parents end up pulling their kids out of Buford, which we think stems directly back to segregation between those two schools. So we thought about, for our project, how we could improve the Charlottesville community as a whole. And we thought that we could do this by improving the public schools in Charlottesville, and just sort of, because that's sort of where the basis is for the Charlottesville community. And especially because it impacts us and our friends as students. We've sort of experienced this with seeing our friends going off to private middle schools and then coming back for public high school. And so we're very like directly linked to it, and we wanted to examine that. So we did notice this pattern of families pulling their children out of Walker and Buford and then sending back to CHS for high school. So we came up with the question of why are families doing so? And then I was gonna sort of like, and then we sort of had the sub questions of how does students leaving impact both the students who leave and the students who stay? How many people is this problem really affecting in the Charlottesville community? How does the history of segregation within Charlottesville continue to impact the situation? And then exploring the timeline of interventions. How would I phrase that better as like a sub question? I was just wondering, I kind of just copy and pasted from the original Google Doc.
I think you could say like, or does Caroline or Margaret, Ann, do you have an idea?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so exploring the timeline of interventions, how I just sort of copy and pasted that from the original Google Doc. What would be a good way to like phrase that as sort of like a sub question?
Where is that? I'm really sorry. I haven't
Oh,
paid
no,
attention.
you're totally good. I don't know if it's in the slide. Sorry.
Like the fourth slide, right? Research
Yeah,
question.
the research
Oh,
question.
thank you. Okay. Also, Sabrina's going to be here in just a minute. Workers have been cutting out her Wi-Fi at her house.
Of COVID.
Yep.
I don't remember what we meant when we came up with that question, and I don't know if we really explored it with the surveys and interviews. What do you all think?
I don't think that we directly addressed it, certainly. I think that if you like looked through all the individual responses, you would find some kind of answer, but I agree. I don't think it was directly addressed.
Cool. I can take that out then.
Okay.
Background.
I think that you can kind of, I think the point was like looking at like what has been done to like address this issue. So you can kind of like briefly address it when talking about remaking middle school. Like, obviously our previous interventions haven't worked, like saying something like we need to look at what didn't work to like help recommend what we think will work and not just keep doing the same thing or something like that. Like,
yeah. And we could sort of bring it back to how like their original solution, which seemed like the best solution at the time, was to make upper elementary and then middle school, but then that really just didn't end up working.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? I think it looks good.
Yeah, I think this is good.
okay, this might be me being nitpicky, but I like really hate the whole like de facto and de jure segregation, because I don't think that de facto segregation exists. Because at the end of the day, it's all like pretty state sanctioned and permitted and like endorsed to some extent. So I think we could just say like segregation within the Charlottesville city school system.
Sure, yeah, that sounds good. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Okay. Cool.
And then, okay, and then methods
Oh.
is Sabrina here? No.
No, I don't
You
think
wanna-
not yet. One thing I was gonna suggest for the demographics that we're talking about adding is to make that into some sort of graphic instead of text. The slides are slightly text heavy right now. So I think if we can add like images or graphics just to make it a little easier to read, I would definitely recommend that.
Awesome. That sounds good. I can work on that.
The like public school ones, they have graphics on the site. So I was just gonna screenshot it and put it in, crop it and put it in.
Awesome. That sounds good. I'll try to see. Peabody was the only one where I could like find it actually on their website. So I'll try and see if they have a graphic on there as well.
Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, sorry. We had workers in my house and like at like 10:25, I hear like a crash in the basement. They're like, uh-oh. And I'm like, uh-oh. I have a meeting 5 minutes, but my sister's taking a time test, so I had to help her with that. But I'm here now.
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope that worked out well. I've heard some horror stories of people like being like, my dog walked in while I was taking the exam, so I failed. Or like someone came to my front door. Okay, so we just finished going over the background slides. And who did methods? So who's up next? Oh my God, perfect. Sabrina. Do you want to walk us through your slide for us?
Yes, let me pull it up really fast.
I can drop the link again if you need to.
Thank you. Okay, so pretty much what I was thinking was like to have, because our three main things were the survey, the interviews, and the coding. And then I wanted to like have a little description below to like how it helped us in our project. And I kind of did it as like a rough draft. Like I wanted to come back to it because like words weren't flowing with me at the moment. So I'm gonna reword it, I think. But yeah, I just said survey sent out to high school students in the Charlottesville area, and then interviews with teachers, school board member, and a guidance counselor. And then we coded for themes and patterns. And then underneath, I just said a little bit about like what information we gathered from that. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. The only thing I would suggest adding is putting in the numbers on the slide if it's not further down, like the number of survey responses.
Okay.
And the number, well, you have the interviews, but the number of survey responses.
Okay.
And maybe like looking at the surveys to say how many were folks who went to private middle school versus like public middle school.
Okay.
Sorry, my roommate just walked into the living room and she started talking to me and I was like, I'm in a meeting. So yeah, I think also, I don't think this needs to be a bullet point, but just making sure like you talk about like who, like how the out.
Okay.
And then I know we talked about it in the last meeting, but also mentioning like how we advertise the survey. I know you guys mostly use social media and like ask friends. So that could be something that you mentioned in the methods too.
Oh, also the prize thing, like the
right, the gift card. Was it $650?
Yeah.
Cards?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was Daniel going to talk about that in his like limitations slide?
Oh, that's true.
I mean, I know he said he was. I don't know if that is still the case, but
He's not going to be there, so someone else can speak
Right.
to the limitations part, so that can just be reassigned. But he mentioned it to me that
Mhm.
that was something that
Mr.
that you
Wedding.
all had discussed as the limitations of the project. So I'm not sure who wants to take that part over.
Okay.
And typically the limitations are going to go like at the end and be kind of short, like just a really quick acknowledgement of like some things that might have affected your findings. So for example, like most of the survey respondents were white, and because we use social media and asked our friends, we had a limited sample, like just a really quick sentence.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say we could put out that like we weren't able to put out a school-wide email, which is why we had to do it that way. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, that would definitely be a limitation.
Yeah.
So that would go after the results typically, like towards the end. And you don't want to spend too much time on that. Like you want to acknowledge it and then like kind of keep it moving.
Yeah, you don't want to keep telling them why it's not good data. Yeah, but I think that looks good. I'm making the limitation slide real quick. It's gonna be like 2 bullet points. And
quick question, should that be between results and conclusions?
yeah, where did I put it? Oh, I put it all the way down there. Beautiful.
Well, I put it all the way down there.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, right after results, before conclusions and recommendations. And I think what I'll do is I'll put because there's not gonna be much text on it, I'll put use half the slide for the words and then try and get a pie chart of the respondent demographics and put that on the right so we have more pictures. More pretty pictures. Okay. Cool. Results.
Yeah, and so I was like just doing this really quick. And also I'm gonna move it on to multiple slides because right now like the font is tiny. But so overall Buford students like felt like they were prepared more socially, and academically they felt less prepared. One student said that the private schools were able to learn above and beyond what the public schools were capable of. Specifically, Peabody and Village have a reputation for having the best academic preparedness in the city, and especially Village, they also have a reputation for extreme lack of diversity. At Buford, there were also a lot of people mentioned that within Buford, it was pretty segregated because of tracking of honors and AP classes. One student said that the achievement gap was not really the school's fault and reflective of, quote, much broader societal injustices. Buford has a bad reputation, and the students who go there are aware of this. One student said it has a really awful reputation that they didn't feel like it deserved. And many of the students who are at Buford and Walker and just public schools in general in the area went there because that's where they were districted, or because it was free, basically because it was the public school option, although some did choose it because of the diversity or because they felt morally against going to private school. Whereas the students who went to private school, there was a lot of reasons: perceived better academics for Village School, it being all girls, but they were also motivated by the reputation of the public schools. One student said that the public schools are kind of sketchy, so that obviously impacts the kids at Buford and Walker who see their classmates leaving. But regardless of whether the school was public or private, a lot of students were going there with their friends. So kind of students traveled in their socioeconomic bubbles to which middle school they were going to.
The one thing that I'm just like thinking about is like I was looking at Margaret Ann's conclusion slide. I think it's really important that we have specific results that reflect our conclusion. And she said that like the presence of the false reputation. So like maybe go back and include a quote about how a student who went to Buford said that like I'm pretty sure there was a response that said that they didn't feel necessarily behind and that they liked their experience, just having that perspective, because that was our conclusion. So if it's all negative about the public school, then we're not going to exactly go where we want to go with that.
Yeah, I think having that quote that Sabrina talked about, and then also like, I mean, and you already included it, Caroline, the one where the student was like, they have a bad reputation, but I don't think it deserves it.
Yeah, I can definitely like emphasize that more.
Yeah. Do we want to include, I feel like, I know that we had like one response of a kid who went to Jack Jewett, but I feel like that kind of is, I mean, I think it's irrelevant. I don't know if that's the thing.
I think we can't really, like from a like statistical point, can't really make any assumptions about Jack Jewett from like literally one student or two students. So I'll just delete that.
What's Jack Jewett?
Jack Jewett, it's one of the county middle schools.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's where a lot of people that go to Albemarle.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Dickerson.
Hi, Dr. Dickerson.
So who did conclusions?
That was me. I did conclusions and recommendations. We split it up over two things. So main takeaway, this was found and cemented in both our interview results and our survey results. Charlottesville has really great public schools, including the middle schools, and they offer a comparative education to the area's private schools. However, parents are still taking their kids out based on a false reputation. And this causes the students that stay in the public schools to feel left behind. They wonder what they're missing. However, and Sabrina brought this up, which I thought was a very good point. Eventually you realize that you didn't actually miss anything because you see that you are doing just as well as your friends who went to middle school. Like once you're a senior, once you've been accepted to a really great college and things like that. So people eventually realize that it isn't that big of a deal, but in the moment, it really does feel like one. And yes, this problem of inequity, of feeling like somebody else has it going better than you, that has existed since Buford and Walker opened, and it's only been exacerbated by the pandemic and the private school's ability to specifically have school in person. So our recommendations, and this was something, I mean, I have like a whole bullet where I'm like, I need to talk about this with other people. But we support Remaking Middle School's plan to reconfigure the Charlottesville middle schools, thinking about moving 6th grade to Buford, and I believe it was making Walker a like citywide preschool, and having in there that this plan was also supported by several of our interviewees, including a guidance counselor and a current school board member. And then I know Kennedy had said some really good points about how, because like we're presenting to city council, sorry, so I'm done like talking about the slides and now I'm talking. Since we're presenting to city council, they don't have a lot of jurisdiction over the schools, but they have clout. And so we can ask them like, hey, please support this plan. So I wanted to kind of think about how to word that better, because you had some good points about it last meeting.
Yeah, so I think you kind of want to approach it from a like, this is what we want you to do perspective. Like, so like, what is it that you guys, if you were the kid sitting in the stakeholder meeting with Remaking Middle Schools, what would you say to them?
Well, I think that they should give Walker or give Buford a little makeover, but that's just me. I think that building is super ugly.
Okay, that also we've talked about that impacts it like so much, right? Like that has an impact on its reputation. So I think that's perfect to say, you know, like this is what we want you to lobby for. Buford needs a makeover. You know?
Yeah, Sherry talked a lot about like having like gathering spaces, and I know they just did the STEM thing, but like kind of make like windows and stuff.
Yeah, so how should we phrase that? Because when I talked about that with Mr. Wilkerson, he kind of brushed it off. I think he thought it was a bit silly. So
maybe we could say like upgrades and then like suggest a couple of specific things. Like Caroline said, windows. I mean, I don't really know if that's a
When
specific
was
thing we
the
could say,
last
but something like
time-
that.
When was the last time Buford was renovated? Does anyone know?
I don't.
I'll email Nancy. She'll know.
In Sherry's interview, she did say, quote, school environment can either facilitate their development or kind of hinder it. And I think right now ours kind of hinders it in a lot of ways. So like, and also she is a retired psychologist, if that's relevant.
Yeah, I think like it's, if you, I mean, who is Mr. Wilkerson?
Sorry,
What-
he's the guidance counselor. He's one of the guidance counselors at CHS.
And he brushed off the whole like,
Well, yeah, because he was kind of like, he said, I've worked in schools that were in a lot worse, like that were in far worse repair than Buford. And I was like, well, that's true. Like it is fully functional. And I realized that, but it doesn't invite students
yeah.
to like, it's
I
intimidating.
feel like
Like
even just giving it like a coat of paint or something.
Yes.
Like literally it doesn't have to be a lot. Like just if I was a like wealthy Charlottesville parent and I was touring schools and I saw like Village versus and like cute downtown, like that's adorable versus like Buford, like I mean if it was just painted something different, I feel like I would be swayed a little bit.
yes. Yeah.
Also, I think
Even the smallest thing.
we could say like, you know, if they, because like the operating yearly budget of the school board is not enough money to like redo Buford, like to renovate Buford. So you could say like, we know that you determine, like you say approve their budget. You know, if they come to you and they ask for money to renovate Buford, like we like, please say yes, like give them that money. It will like, it might seem like, you know, you can even mention it might seem like silly that you think that we think that the way a school looks impacts the school, but it does because it's only reinforcing this false idea that it's a bad school because it looks bad. But if the school building reflects the quality of the education, then that is going to like make so much change and like a difference when someone walks in and tours, you know, or just when kids go to school every day. Like kids in Charlottesville should have nice facilities to use.
Yeah. Have you seen Bonneville? Good grief.
Yeah. Like that's not some ridiculous like idea that, you know, Charlottesville students, like public school students deserve nice facilities. Like that's like that should be a given, but it's not, you know, like so I think that's really important. And like that's something that they can directly like do because, you know, like obviously the school board has to ask for the money, but city council, you know, they're like, we don't want to give you the money. So like, if you're like, you know, that's something that they have power over is whether or not Buford gets renovated.
Okay. And then that was kind of it because like this really is, I mean, it's just like a huge race issue as well. A lot of like unconscious bias goes into this whole issue. So, and there's nothing that city council can do about that, at least nothing that I can think of. So I think that those were that first one, like redoing or reconfiguring the middle school plan. I think that was a big one. And yeah, and I mean, as we just talked about, I think the physical appearance is important as well.
So what the remaking middle school's plan is that everyone will go to Buford, right?
Yes.
Be the one.
I mean, and everyone goes to Buford anyways, but everyone will go to Buford for 6 through 8, and the elementary schools will become, I believe, K through 5.
I do think, if I may chime in, just because I'm just really curious about this conversation. When you're thinking about reinventing middle school and a strategy that could help that process, if from what you're researching, you're uncovering unconscious bias, not only racial bias, but also just the buildings and the bias between the two schools. if you're going to then blend that, fostering an environment where teachers and guidance counselors and staff and students are allowed to just explore what that bias is and be able to address that. Even just like training what implicit bias is, or, like having students be able to engage in how to overcome those biases.
Yeah, I think when I was, I think that's a good point. I think when I was talking about that, I was thinking more about like when like your kid has just graduated from 4th grade and you're trying to figure out where they're going to go to middle school. I think that's more of what I was thinking about, parents being like, oh, well, I don't want to send my kid to Buford because like if they like associate that with like a higher population of students of color, and that like is like shown time and time again that people associate a school with like a more diverse population where it isn't as good, and there's already this like reputation that Buford has. That's kind of more of what I'm getting at, like why people don't even like, and why the kids don't enter Walker or Buford in the first place. And I think that, I think that's super interesting. It's like just a whole like entire every aspect of Charlottesville. It's that kind of problem. But yes.
I do kind of agree. I feel like I like what you just said about the bias, because I feel like we can, obviously this is a very specific thing that we targeted about like the private versus public schools in Charlottesville, but obviously like we talked about that before we came on this topic, whereas like Charlottesville like has a lot of systemic racism and like bias and other things like that. So I feel like if maybe in our conclusion we just said something like a super like broad point, just like bias exists in Charlottesville, like that was a conclusion that we came upon, and also draw attention to the fact that like when we talk about Buford having this false reputation, like it has a false reputation, but like Caroline was saying, for like the tracked students, like what me and you, Margaret Ann, like we'd have a different perspective about being equal to the kids who went to private school than like say somebody who grew up in like a less nice neighborhood, or like we obviously have a ton of privilege to be able to say that. So like I feel like just saying like bias does exist, and then having in our recommendations like how Misty was saying, like some training about that in our schools just in general, like just a broad point to like tie it back to the bigger picture, because I think that's what we were like overall trying to work for in this whole project.
I think it would be more useful, honestly, to have it in elementary school and have parents be a part of it. Because I think that parents are far more engaged. Like we know that just like from going from elementary to middle to high school, parents are far more engaged in elementary school than they are in middle school or high school. So that's an interesting idea, actually. Kennedy, what do you think about that?
Sorry, Nancy already replied to my email, which I'm like, woman, holy cow. But sorry, can you give me spark notes of what you're just saying? Because I was reading.
Yeah, so Misty recommended like bias training about like for within the middle schools. And I was like, well, I think it starts earlier, like when people are deciding where to send their kids. And so then I thought maybe if we wanted to recommend that, I think it would be more useful in the elementary schools, because, and I talked about how parents are more engaged in elementary school than any other kind of section of school.
Yeah, I think also it kind of like is caused also by the fact that the elementary schools are segregated. So like,
yeah, I was gonna say that like one of the reasons my parents bought the house that we live in is because they liked the way Venable looked. So like it really does go like, obviously like that's not to say like, well, throw our hands in the air, we can't do anything, but like I definitely think it even goes like to where you're even going to elementary school.
Maybe one of our recommendations could even be to just like have another group, or maybe this group in the future, like look closely at the elementary schools, because I think that's like definitely really where it starts. Like Caroline said, my parents were sort of the same way about Burnley Moran, and just like with all the recommendations, just kind of the idea of like, this like won't just be solved by reconfiguring Buford and Walker, but it's definitely a start, but there's still like so much that can be done.
All right, I'm gonna ask Nancy if she has a minute to chat today because she's on the Remaking Middle Schools board. And I'll send you guys an email with what comes out of that. I want to know a little more before we go into presentation so that we can inform our recommendations with it, because I think per her email, she said she's talking to the architecture firm that will be redoing the redesign next week. So I think they are gonna renovate completely. But I just kind of want to know a little more.
Wow.
But yeah, I think like the thing is like this, I'm getting pissed off. Sorry. I'm getting angry about Charlottesville and racism as I'm sitting here. I'm fuming. But it is seriously such an issue in Charlottesville. And like, I just remember like when I was about to move into college and the week before I moved in, there was a white supremacist terrorist attack in Charlottesville. And I don't know if city council even did anything about that. Like, but it's overt and not overt in Charlottesville. And it's like it's infuriating, but sorry, that's just me going on a little rant. But I think just being like lobbying for integration of the elementary schools to the extent that they can. And then, you know, doing like, it's like doing something on a community-wide level to like address like implicit bias and racism, kind of just like a broad, like, I think Sabrina was like a broad statement about like how it's like not just a school problem and the issues in the community affect the school. And I think, you know, the more that we integrate elementary schools, the less parents are going to be pulling their kid out of middle school, in my mind. Maybe they'll start pulling their kid out of elementary school, but I don't know. But like, if they're able to watch their little white kid doing very well academically in a class that is a much higher percentage of minorities than Venable Elementary, I feel like they will be less likely to pull them out in middle school, especially after remaking middle school. Thoughts?
So yes, I agree with everything you just said. I have under recommendations, like this issue really begins in elementary school. Integrating the elementary schools would, because it wouldn't like absolve the problem at all, but it would change the situation somehow. So if people have thoughts on how I can word that.
Are you talking about integrating as in like the remaking middle schools thing, or like changing how the schools are
That's a great
districted?
question. Redistricting is what I meant to say.
Okay.
Redistrict.
Then yeah, you could say
so that they are more like equally integrated. Is there a better way to say that?
I'm going to change it to rezoning because that's the technical term.
Okay, thank you.
also, if we're like how Kennedy was saying, we don't think we really know enough to like until you meet with Nancy, like know enough to support a specific plan. We could always just say like, back to my broad statement, but like say something like continue to support, like continue to question the society, like Charlottesville society, and like look for problems, like something super broad, just like pushing them to like, I don't know, even after we're done speaking, have it in the back of their brain. Like that's a recommendation. Like, don't forget us is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Also, I think saying, instead of equally integrated, saying like more reflective of the diversity of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Because like your goal in terms of like school integration and like zoning is like you want each school to have the same poverty level within like a couple percentage points, and then you also want them to be demographically similar to your city as a whole. So, but it's like difficult because this is like a side note, but it's very difficult to do that because in parents involved versus Seattle School District,
Yeah.
they said that you can't like integrate, you can't zone kids based on poverty level. And then in Green, maybe. I don't know. Basically, like all these cases that walked back
Mhm.
Brown v. Board, they've just made it very difficult to integrate schools. So it's like hard. That's just a little fun fact.
Also,
I don't
okay to acknowledge like how challenging and difficult it is, just given how deep the systemic racism goes with those, but it's okay to acknowledge the difficulties, but also be aspirational
Mhm.
in your ask.
That's a great way to say that.
I don't know if this is like a possibility, but in Nice White Parents, which everybody should listen to, they like at the end basically decide to kind of like allot who goes to middle school, like entirely on a lottery system, like who goes to which middle school. So I know that obviously like New York City has like so many schools, and we're talking about 5 elementary schools, 5 or 6 elementary schools, but I don't know if like that would be a possibility.
That's an interesting idea. I know that they did it I think they just did it in Boston with preschool. And so but it's like that's something like directly tied to equity and stuff. That's interesting. Kennedy, do you think that that would be something we should include?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Oh God, I had a thought and then I lost it. I think it's a good idea. Because specifically, I was gonna say specifically Charlottesville is small. Like it's a small little city. So like even if you're going to an elementary school that's like not 3 blocks from you, you're not going that far.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's worth mentioning. And just like literally making it random who goes where. I'm sure a bunch of people would be really pissed off about Venable Elementary though.
That would be
The
so
only
fun.
thing that I like was thinking about how that would like negatively impact people is that like Charlottesville, you're right, is small. So like I know like people in my neighborhood like walk to elementary school a lot, and if like they're going different places, that like puts a really big burden on a lot of parents, and I don't know if that lashback would be how big that would be. I feel like it would be huge, and that's not even in like, it's not even me just saying in my like nice neighborhood all these little like white kids walk together. It's like everywhere. That's unanimous that kids travel in groups to school. That would impact everybody, and I don't really know how that would look.
It's the difference between like oh my gosh, I can't believe we haven't thought of this. Sorry, I'm gonna finish my point and then I remembered another point. Like schools being equally like distributed and creating a community. Like elementary schools are really supposed to be community based, but a whole different point that this goes to is housing segregation. That really causes school segregation, and the city has way more say over housing segregation than the school board. Like that is something that they can directly change. So I definitely think it would be worth saying something about housing segregation and how that can like really change the way that our schools work. And that is something that, and like even saying like, we know that you guys can't zone schools, but we know that you can address housing segregation in Charlottesville.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything else we want to add to this one? Or any like rewording that we want to do? I was kind of just taking notes as we were talking.
I feel like you could just say like rezone the elementary schools, and then like when you're like describing it, be like, this obviously begins in, or like we found that this begins in elementary school, so let's rezone. Not, you don't have to like put that on the slide.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna make a housing segregation bullet. Okay. So what was I saying? We can meet. Do you guys want to meet Sunday night?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like practice present.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What time do you guys want to do that?
I have something from 4, but I should be available anytime after 5.
I'm good after like 6, I think.
This is so annoying, but I would prefer if we could do it like maybe like around 3, or I don't know, like sometime before, because my soccer team has like a routine that we do before big soccer games, and it takes a while. But I can probably just skip that.
That's so ominous, Sabrina.
I'm sorry. We're working hard this year. We beat Monticello on Monday, and we tied Western
Oh,
last
congratulations.
night. Yeah, it was pretty big deal. Monticello is always like a overtime game, and we easily beat them. And we haven't tied. Charlottesville High School hasn't tied Western. Girls soccer hasn't tied Western in over 10 years. It was crazy.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Isn't Western like pretty good at most sports?
Yeah, they're like good at every single
God.
sport.
Yeah.
We almost beat them. We scored first in like the last 5 minutes, and then they had like a cheap corner kick. It was so frustrating, but we were still happy that we tied.
One of the girls that I used to nanny plays JV lacrosse there, and she's like on, what's it called? Like what's the club team for lacrosse in Charlottesville?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. One of my friends-
Cavalier, isn't it like?
Oh,
Cavalier?
yeah. That's one of the other ones.
Yeah, she's on that.
Yeah, they're always like 10 of the top 15 at cross country meets.
Yeah, the cross country and swimming teams are insane.
That must be so frustrating. Oh my gosh. Like my high school was like killer at tennis, but we went 0-10 my junior year of high school in football.
That's tough.
So like it was so hit or miss. Yeah,
So the presentation, you guys are aware, will need to be kept to 20 minutes.
Yeah, and we'll time ourselves on Sunday. Misty, you're welcome to come. I don't know. Daniel made it seem like if he was there, it has to be a public meeting. But I don't know if you know more about that with like FOIA.
I can clarify if you're just doing a practice presentation, if it needs to go through a formal process, if the presentation folks are getting together.
Yeah.
To just review the order of things and practice the 20-minute speech. So I have your email, so I'll email you guys back as soon as I hear.
Okay. And I asked Nancy if she had a moment to talk today. I don't know. I know you guys have that senior thing, but if I'll send you I asked her, I was like, if you're comfortable, like if any of you are free, you can also join.
Okay.
So I'll let you guys know when if she gets back to me about like a time that works. But yeah, I think we're good. Other than that, I can't believe like congratulations on graduating your fun little senior thing today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll be fun.
Where is everybody going?
It's at the track.
No, I meant to college.
Oh, good work, Sabrina. I'm going to Kenyon.
I'm going to Wesleyan.
That's
It's so exciting. Oh my gosh.
Get ready, Caroline.
I applied to like a crazy amount of schools, like, and I only got into Richmond, William & Mary, and UVA. And at that point, I was like, that's not even a decision. Like, obviously, I'm going to UVA.
I know I applied to so many schools, but I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, I know if I get into UVA, like I'm definitely going there.
Early.
Yeah, I knew.
It's hard
Felt
to
it in my heart.
It's so hard to turn down UVA at the cost of in-state tuition. Oh, Sabrina, I have so much wisdom to give you, but one thing is Batten and McIntyre cost $20,000 extra. Just FYI. They don't tell you that. It's a big secret. And then you get in and they charge you another $20,000. So
Thank you. I don't even know what Batten is. Is it McIntyre like business?
McIntyre's the commerce school, and Batten's the public policy school.
Okay, noted. I know engineering costs like 15,000 more. They also don't tell you that.
Sarah, does engineering cost more? Yeah, but only like 5,000. She said she thinks it's only like. She said it's only 5,000 more.
I don't know.
But they don't take
I
any
just know it costs more.
gen ed classes. One of the people who rent my our basement apartment, they graduated in 2019, and they were like, that's actually who you really have to worry about, the engineering students, because they don't take any classes to like broaden their horizons. It's just like computer science.
Literally. It's so
Yeah, my boyfriend's mom like used to teach she's like the dean of the arts program at VCU now, but she used to teach at UVA, and she's like an English, I think, minor, and she keeps telling him like, you have to take something like history or humanities or like philosophy, like something where you're gonna write, because the only thing he's ever written so far is like a physics lab report, like nothing about like argument, like no argument essays, no like being able to communicate, nothing like that. They take only math and science. It's ridiculous.
One of my friends was a biomedical engineer, and I was a first year and he was a fourth year. And I proofread this man's thesis. And I was like, you don't know how to use a semicolon. I was like, this is horrible. Like, I'm sure the science is fine, but this is some of the worst writing I have ever seen. Like, your subjects and verbs do not align. Like, it was just so bad. And that's what that made me think of. And I remember looking at him and I go, you have a degree from you're about to graduate from UVA and you don't know how to use a semicolon. So bad.
I hate to interrupt the party, especially planning and talking about thinking about the future in college, but I just wanted to note the time, and I think our time is 11:30 where we need to wrap up. So is there any other points that we need to talk about before we have Jeremy, who's our tech support, sign us off?
I don't have anything.
I think we're good.
Okay, and I'll respond to the email about the Sunday run through.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. It was nice
Nice to meet you guys.
Bye.
Awesome work.
Bye.
Thanks.